we're out here. Got another video today on my way home. Back through the canyon. Driving home takes way longer. So I can have more time to converse with myself. So I thought I'd talk about a topic that I've actually talked to a lot of different people about. And it's not mine. I kind of read it in a book. But I took what the author was talking about and what she said and try to apply it to different reasons different scenarios. And it seems to work okay. And it kind of comes to this idea of judging others. I put my glasses on. Judging others because they're complaining about a situation or whatever, and you don't have empathy for it, or not you, but you do. And so the way I think about it is this: the quote I read in the book was, "It's only as funny as it has been funny to you before." And it was in relation to a joke. And I kind of relate it to happiness and sadness and laughter as well. I'm sure it applies to more, but those are the three that I kind of think of. And so very often we judge others' hurt compared to the hurt we've had. And we kind of push them off to the side if we don't think that their hurt is worth the response they're giving. And it usually follows with, "I've had worse than that," right? So, so the one I use a lot is, "You're only as happy as you have been before." And so I take it way back to when you're a child and you get a toy for Christmas that you've been waiting for. You've been waiting for this fire truck for months. You've seen commercials for it. You've told your parents you wanted it. You've asked Santa for it. You really, really want this fire truck. Christmas morning comes. Lo and behold, Santa's left you the fire truck, and you are ecstatic. Think of the little boy in A Christmas Story when he gets the Red Ryder BB gun, like that. And that is the happiest moment of your life. You're 5 years old. 5 years old, you want this fire truck. Now jump ahead to when you're 10 and you really want this bike. You want a bicycle. The bike, you want a bike because you can be mobile, you can ride to friends' houses, you can do tricks, you've seen the X Games. I'm kind of dating myself. We used to go outside and play before there was a lot of video games. We used to be outside. Anyway. So you want a bike, and you pray for it, you ask Santa for it, you ask your parents for it, you say you do whatever, you'll be a good kid for the rest of the year if you get this bike. Because you know that with the bike comes freedom or whatever. And then Christmas morning, you get that bike. That is now the happiest moment of your life because of what it brings. So if you think of a scale, 1 to 10, 1 being not happy at all, 10 being very happy, you are now a 10. You were also a 10 when you got the fire truck. But now looking back on it, the bike is a 10 and the fire truck is an 8 to you now. Because getting that fire truck now wouldn't really be the same thing. Even if it was the exact same fire truck, you wouldn't have the same ecstatic response because there's something that you wanted more that has now made you happier. Jump ahead a few years, same thing, you get your very first car. Your very first car, you are ecstatic. That is now the 10, the bike is an 8, and the fire truck is a 6. Getting a bike, getting that same bike that you wanted when you were 10, when you're now like 17, is not, you don't really care. I mean, it's the same bike to the same person, but it doesn't really matter to you now. You've had something better. So now, looking back on that, you see a kid get a bike, you're like, that's fine, but wait till you get a car. And then you get like a girlfriend, and the girlfriend, or boyfriend, whatever. I'm talking to myself, and I don't know if anyone's gonna watch this, so I'm gonna say girlfriend. You get your first girlfriend, that is now the 10, you have your first kiss, right? That is a 10, the car is an 8, the bike is a 6, and the fire truck's like a 4, or a 5, whatever. And so on and so on. Then you get married, or you propose, you get proposed to, you get married, you have a kid. Each of these big life events has the potential to make you the most happy you've ever been before. So now that's a 10, but you can only really gauge any time you get happy based on the happiest moment you've ever had. And that is sort of like where a lot of things lie. Same thing with sadness or like pain. So when you're a kid and you fall down and scrape your knee, you're like, oh my God, the world is ending. There's a drop of blood. This is going to be it. And you get a little bit older and you like cut yourself. Now you have like a full on cut and you maybe need stitches. That is a worse pain and a worse injury. So now you're like, yeah, that scrape was bad, but I prefer the scrape to this cut. And then you like break an arm, or you break a leg, or now you need surgery, or whatever. So now your pain tolerance, which you typically hear, is greater because of the pain you've experienced. It's the same idea with happiness and laughter, jokes, right? And sadness. Like if you've gone through the darkest moment of your life, and that is the 10, the hardest, darkest, saddest, most mentally difficult moment of your life, that is a 10. Any other event you have in your life will be in relation to that 10. And you may have an event that surpasses that 10, which that now becomes the new 10. And this 10 you think you have is no longer a 10, it is an 8. But in the moment, it was a 10. And so frequently, I don't want to say judge, but we hear others talk about something they're going through, and we will brush them off in comparing their 10 to our 10. And I think that's a disservice to like a lot of people. I mean, there are times when I think you can call someone out because they're like, especially if you know them really well, like you can call them out and kind of help them and motivate them to feel better. When you can say, I know this sucks for you right now, but remember when like that was much worse. And then in comparison to that, how does this feel? And like, I try to do that to myself because it's hard. We get so caught up in the moment and our emotions are flaring that we over exaggerate the moment compared to like past moments and past experiences. And I think it would be more beneficial if we understood that someone's 10 may not be our 10, but as a 10 is a 10 across the board. Your saddest moment in your life that is the most heartbreaking for you, and my saddest moment in my life that is the most heartbreaking for me, if they're both 10s, then we can relate on the feelings involved, but maybe not the situation. So having to like lose a sibling, or lose a child, or lose a parent, or get fired from a job, or like lose income and you're now down to one income as a family and times get really tough, like these are really, really hard moments. And like I may not know what some of those feel like, but if that is your 10, I have also had a 10. And if that is true, then I can sympathize and say, I know what a hard moment feels like. I know what a 10 feels like. I think it's hard when people say, so first of all, I think one thing that gets misconstrued and that I think we should kind of shy away from saying, which I do not say it at all anymore. I used to, until I started thinking about this, and I realized it doesn't help anybody, is saying, I know how you feel. I think that is one of the most insensitive things you can ever say to anybody is, I know how you feel. Because you cannot possibly know how they feel. Even if it is the same situation and you're both sad about the same thing, you cannot know how somebody else feels. It is purely subjective, and only they can know the feeling. However, I do believe that we can relate to each other on the ideas of the 1 to 10 scale of happiness and sadness and laughter and joy, stuff like that. And I think we need to be a little bit more sensitive on how we phrase, I know how you feel. Instead, if you say like, is this a 10 to you? If this is a 10, and this is the worst part of, like the hardest moment of your life, I know what the hardest moment of my life was, and I know the feelings I had during that time. So if you are now at your 10 and I've had my 10, then I can sympathize with how hard this must feel on you. I cannot sympathize with the loss. I don't know what it is you're feeling. But if this is the hardest moment of your life, then I've had the hardest moment of mine too. And I believe we can be here for each other. Or joy, or whatever. If someone is ecstatic and they are so happy about something, like take working at a job or something, right? I remember when I got hired at my previous job, I was so happy. I was so proud. I was so happy. I felt really good about myself. But all of the other coworkers there just thought it was like, whatever. It's kind of another job to them. And so when I came to them and I was like, man, I'm really happy to be working here, they're all just kind of like, yeah, just wait. Like, it'll get worse. Like, it's not that good. And that kind of sucks, right? Like, you're on this high and someone wants to like bring you down because they almost like don't want to see you happy, which kind of sucks. I think there's also a little bit of competition in there, which I'll go into competition probably in another video. I have like a lot to say about like competition, not as like athletic events, but like interpersonal competition. But anyway, that's for another time. Yeah, so this idea that nobody wants to see you really succeed and like be happy, so they kind of bring you down and kind of make you realize and kind of like rain on your parade, which isn't very fun. The other thing is when we've all probably been there and like someone breaks up with you or you break up with someone, and someone says there is always more fish in the sea, that is like, oh my God, I hated that. It's like, that's not what I want to hear right now. Like, this is really hard. This really sucks. And you're trying to downplay it or make it seem like you can just pull me right out. And that's not what people need. I think sometimes, some people do. But I think for the most part, it's like, this is really hard, isn't it? Like, have compassion. Is this an 8? Is this a 7? If it's like a 3, then you're like, dude, get over it. It's a 3, right? Like, there's way worse things that can happen. We get this a lot with like kids who are like crying because they couldn't have ice cream. You're like, dude, you're crying over ice cream? Like, I lost my job. Like, screw your ice cream. That's like losing ice cream is the least of my concerns. So I get like children's a little bit different. But like with each other, I think we should empathize and kind of have a little bit more compassion with all the scale of emotions, whether it's happiness or sadness or loss, or feeling like they don't belong, or feeling like they can't be themselves, or whatever. Like, that sucks. I may not relate to you in the moment. I may not know what your situation is. I may not be able to relate with the problem you're dealing with. But if this is your 10, like, I've had a 10 too. Like, I know what my darkest, hardest moment was. And if this is yours, then I want to be there for you and let you know that, like, you have someone in your corner that's like wanting the best for you. Not that I'm going to give you advice. I can't like fix your problem. But I think what we need is just like a lending hand and just someone to hear us out. And so I've kind of told that to other people of this, like, everyone's 10 is a 10. It's completely subjective. Like, your 10 is your 10. But comparing situations to situations and say, I've had it worse or I've had it better, doesn't really help anybody. Funny enough, I have a client who's like he was paralyzed in like an injury, and he's paralyzed from like the chest down. And it's so funny that I feel bad complaining around him, because like, there's not much I can say that he would like sympathize with. And we joke about it, like, he's totally cool. We like laugh about it. But like, I hurt my knee. I'm like, man, it's really hard to walk. And he's just kind of like, oh, is it? As he's like wheeling himself around in a wheelchair, trying to get like in and out of doors and into his car and stuff. And it like makes you stop and be like, yeah, you know, I kind of sound like selfish. Like, I sound dumb complaining about this when others have it way worse than me. Which I think also helps to know that although this is your 10, maybe your 8, once you realize that there are worse 10s out there, I think you stop and realize that maybe what I'm so concerned with isn't that big of a concern. Like, I also think like certain hardships are like generationally not infinite, but probably infinite problems that people have had for thousands of years and will have for thousands of years. It's easy to think that we're the only ones dealing with something because like nobody really knows you're dealing with it. Nobody really knows what you're feeling. Maybe nobody has you feel like nobody relates. And so you think you're out there all alone dealing with this problem. But when you think of like how many people have ever lost their job, you're like think back in Roman times and World War II and homes were getting destroyed. Like, people have been losing their jobs forever. And we've all like made it. It can be done. You just gotta like realize that you can do it. It may be difficult, but it can be done. And there's a little bit of optimism in that. And so to think that sometimes our problems although there may be 8s or 10s or whatever, like, people can relate. You're not alone in your feeling. And I think we can all either ask for help to say, this is my 10. Like, can you help me through this? Not give me advice, but like, help me cope with this 10. While also on the other side of seeing people upset and being distraught or something, if it's sadness, and kind of sympathizing with their current state of being a 10. Like those who have like lost a loved one, family member, brother, parents, sister, whatever. Those who have lost that, seeing someone who's lost like their gerbil, like a 10 is a 10. And although it seems like selfish that someone's crying over losing a gerbil when you've had a much worse loss, that's like selfish. Instead of being like this little 10-year-old who lost their gerbil, be like, I understand this must be really hard for you. It's hard to lose something you really love. And they would know in the moment that you recognize the 10 as a 10. So that's what I've been thinking. Not recently, I've kind of had that thought for kind of a long time now. When I tell people, they seem to like it and appreciate it. So I thought, why not put it on here and maybe more people will see it. Let me know what you think. Later.